PBCJ, the People's Station, bringing you the 2024-2025 budget debates live.
Watch the trend, pick up the trend. This are the trend for all the youths them. Watch the trend, pick up the trend. TREND. Big up the trend for education, teachers and the students. A fully bright future, yes, that are the new trend. Better governance, partner with the parents. Follow the big trend, elevate the youth them. Improve the schools, track performance, access and attendance. From infant, primary to university students. Turn up the skills training, full steam, we are getting. Follow the big trend, elevate the schools, yeah. Watch the trend, pick up the trend. This are the trend for all the youths them. Watch the trend, pick up the trend. TREND. For more technology, yes, and better planning, quality education, that's what should be trending. From principals to EOs, everybody winning. Follow the ministry. We're changing the system. Watch the trend, pick up the trend.
This is Trend, Transforming Education for National Development, a program designed by the Ministry of Education and Youth to transform Jamaica's education system for a brighter tomorrow.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican. We are Jamaican. And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education
To the road conditions.
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
$1.3 trillion. That's the figure budgeted for the fiscal year 2024-2025, which begins on April 1. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Join PBCJ via live broadcast and on our online platforms to hear how the government is proposing to use these funds. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke will open the debate on Tuesday, March 12. Shadow Finance Minister Julian Robinson will have his say on Thursday, March 14. Opposition Leader Mark Golding will make his contribution on Tuesday, March 19. Prime Minister Andrew Holness will speak on Thursday, March 21, and on Tuesday, March 26, the Finance Minister will close the budget debate. It's your money, our money, the nation's money. PBCJ, the People's Station, bringing you the 2024-2025 budget debates live.
Welcome to PBCJ's coverage of the Lower House. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The session will start with prayers followed by a roll call of those in attendance. This is usually followed by questions and answers to questions, statements by ministers, items under public business and private members' motions. But before we begin, let's try a parliamentary trivia question. The Standing Orders Committee shall have the duty of considering from time to time and reporting on all matters relating to these standing orders as may be referred to it by the House. Is this true or false? Get the answer at the end of this introduction. In this session's agenda, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clarke, will be closing the 2024-2025 budget debate. The government has tabled a $1.3 trillion expenditure for the upcoming fiscal year. No new taxes were introduced. While opening the debate on March 12, Dr. Clarke announced income tax breaks and measures aimed at protecting, preserving, and strengthening the country's macroeconomic stability. These included an increase in the personal income tax threshold from $1.5 million to $1.7 million, which will take effect in April. There will also be a reverse tax credit of $20,000 for all Jamaicans who earn under $3 million, which is to be implemented this year. Opposition spokesperson on finance, planning and the public service, Julian Robinson, and leader of the opposition, Mark Golding, both made their contributions and critiques. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, in his contribution, made several announcements, including a 15% increase in Jamaica's minimum wage, as well as changes to the National Housing Trust's homeowners loan scheme. Remember, the annual budget indicates what will be done with the finances of the country over the course of the year. And that's what's on the agenda. It should be noted that elements of the day's agenda can be changed or moved. But before we go, here are a few things you should bear in mind if you plan to attend a session at Gordon House. No visitor shall create any act of disorder within the precincts of the House. No visitor shall be admitted to the House without first obtaining an admission card. Visitors who remain within the precincts of the House during a suspension of the session are asked to keep silent. No photography, videography, or sketching of the proceedings is allowed unless so authorized by the presiding officer. It's almost time to go to the main event, but before that, let's get the answer to the trivia question. We asked, the Standing Orders Committee shall have the duty of considering from time to time and reporting on all matters relating to the standing orders, as may be referred to it by the House. Is this true or false? It's true. The Standing Orders Committee shall have the duty of considering from time to time and reporting on all matters relating to the standing orders, as may be referred to it by the House. You should know that the permanent written rules under which the House regulates its proceedings are known as the standing orders. Now over to the proceedings.
For little people, it's a really big world. A big world to discover and explore.
Debates on PBCJ, the People's Station.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican. We are Jamaican. And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education
To the road conditions.
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
Tell me something. How much time you ever hear the government announce a project and wonder why they must spend millions on this and not on that? Well, if you think there's nothing you can do about how your money is spent, think again. Jamaica's budget is more than just numbers. It reveals our biggest problems and goals, our plans to fix them, and what to prioritize. We can even call it a promise book of what will be done to improve our lives. Now, let's talk about the 4 stages of the budget cycle so we can understand how it works and get involved. Stage 1, planning and review. The Ministry of Finance sends out a budget call to every ministry, which outlines the priorities and constraints to guide how those ministries prepare their budget. After ministries submit their drafts, the Finance Ministry reviews, compiles, and sends them to Cabinet for review and approval. Stage 2, Parliamentary debate and approval. The Finance Minister tables all budget documents in the House of Representatives. The Standing Finance Committee, which is all 63 MPs, sits to examine the budget documents, and each minister presents their budget and answers concerns the committee has. The committee's report is then tabled in the House, followed by the estimated expenditure, which is tabled as legislation called the Appropriations Bill. That's right, the budget of Jamaica is law. The budget debate formally opens. We have presentations from the Minister of Finance, the Prime Minister, Opposition Leader, and the Shadow Finance Minister. After their presentations, our MPs vote for or against approval. Like all legislation, it goes to the Senate for their approval and then to the Governor General for his royal assent. No later than March 31st, end of the financial year. Stage 3, implementation. The new financial year begins and approved budgets are sent to ministries. Collecting taxes, borrowing loans, and receiving grants begin. and so does the spending. Stage 4, budget oversight. Now, this is where citizens don't need permission to get involved. Throughout the year, operations and spending are assessed by internal auditors and the Auditor General's department that makes sure public entities are compliant with laws and that their financial reports are accurate. All Auditor General reports are submitted to our Parliament's Public Accounts Committee for review and cross-examination of public officials. The Ministry of Finance, Integrity Commission, and MOCA also monitor government spending to guard against poor financial management and corruption. It is our job to review these reports, check the findings in the newspaper, and look up if breaches are fixed at jampja.org. If not, ask your MP what he or she has done to ensure public officials are held to account. No more 9-day wonders. So, did the government follow through on their spending and investment promises last year? What promises will next year's budget have? How will they affect you, and how can you ensure that you get what is promised? For access to the national budget, check out JAMP's easy digital version and contact info for your MP at jampja.org. Then link your MP and see what progress is being made throughout the entire budget cycle. Support JAMP. Let's do our job to make Jamaica land we love, Jamaica land we own, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, funded by the European Union in partnership with the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica.
$1.3 trillion. That's the figure budgeted for the fiscal year 2024-2025, which begins on April 1. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Join PBCJ via live broadcast and on our online platforms to hear how the government is proposing to use these funds. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke will open the debate on Tuesday, March 12. Shadow Finance Minister Julian Robinson will have his say on Thursday, March 14. Opposition leader Mark Golding will make his contribution on Tuesday, March 19. Prime Minister Andrew Holness will speak on Thursday, March 21, and on Tuesday, March 26, the Finance Minister will close the budget debate. It's your money, our money, the nation's money. PBCJ, the People's Station, bringing you the 2024-2025 budget debates live.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican. We are Jamaican. And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education
To the road conditions.
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
What if I told you that you own thousands of acres of land, more than 100 companies with over 100,000 employees and billions in the bank? Well, I have news for you. You do. Jamaica belongs to you, and you need expert protection to safeguard those assets for your future, your children, and your children's children. And you already have it. A key protector is our Auditor General, whose role is outlined by the biggest, baddest law in all the land, the Constitution. The Auditor General's main job is to examine the financial reports of all public entities to ensure that they are accurate and that public funds are used appropriately and effectively to deliver public goods and services without waste, theft, and mismanagement. Here's how it's done. A team of highly trained auditors reviews and verifies that the right amount of money is spent on only what's approved in the national budget and in accordance with the laws and policies that protect public resources. Now, the right amount of money can be spent on the right things and Jamaicans still no benefit. So the Auditor General assesses the outcome for programs and projects as well. Audit reports will also contain recommendations to improve the operations of the audited entity, and the findings are submitted to the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee, the PAC. Every year, an annual report is submitted by December 31. Both government and opposition MPs serve on the PAC, and they summon public entity managers to answer questions so that they and the public, the real owners, yes, you, can understand what went wrong and how to prevent a recurrence. What are some things that can and do go wrong? Cost and time overruns, missing financial reports, unreported losses, unauthorized spending, unsupported payments, unlawful contracting, undisclosed conflict of interest, and more. Though the AG identifies the abuse of laws and policies, the law does not empower that office to penalize or sanction, but it does empower the Financial Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. It is also the duty of other anti-corruption and law enforcement bodies to grab the button and investigate to ensure penalties are applied when appropriate. But the AG alone can't watch all. So when things don't look straight, the Minister of Finance, members of Parliament, Cabinet, public servants, and importantly, you must blow the whistle and the AG will look deeper. So this is where you come in, with 4 things you can do to strengthen those who are fighting to protect our future. Tune into PBCJ on Tuesdays for the PAC and mind your business, Jamaica. It's our belongings, but we have to move like we understand that. And next time you hear a news report about the AG, you just left it up to the media. Visit the AG's website at www.auditorgeneral.gov.jm and check out the findings yourself. Then, keep track of how government has fixed the issue or not at www.jampja.org's accountometer. And if you're not happy with what you see, it's your job to contact your employees. It's easy when you visit the MP tracker on jampja.org. This is how we can do our part to make Jamaica land we own, Jamaica land we love, and Jamaica land we run well. A message from the Jamaica Accountability Meter portal, funded by the European Union and UK Aid.
Caller, you are now on air.
Okay, so I recently graduated from high school and I'm nervous about what's next. Some motivation would help.
All right, caller, we have just what you need.
What you are getting today is a passport to the world. And you are going to decide how high your plane will fly. Because even though you have a passport, it doesn't mean that there won't be turbulence in the sky and some scary moments where you have to hold on to your seat and have faith that you will make it. I want you to remember the 5 important P's that help me to be successful. Positivity, perseverance, professionalism, progressiveness, and having a prosperous spirit. I can guarantee you that if you follow that template in life, you will be successful.
The following is brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Your government is empowering you through education, training, and development. That is why we have removed all fees for every Jamaican accessing training through the Heart NSTA Trust. So, whatever you desire training in, food and hospitality, beauty and cosmetology, housekeeping and hotel management, welding, carpentry, masonry, or any of the dozens of programs Heart offers, you can enroll completely free and change your life. We are building Jamaica.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
I'm out of school now, and me a look a job. I'ma just go on an interview and them tell me say me not have enough experience. But I'ma forget experience if me not get no job.
Don't worry yourself, bro. I have some info for you. There is a $2 billion program that will help high school graduates gain job experience. 2,500 5th and 6th form graduates will benefit from the LIFT program over 5 years.
This program is also about investment. And so our young people will be getting $85,000 monthly. That is a part of poverty alleviation. This $70,000 in hand and $15,000 will be placed in their bank accounts that they will not be able to access until they complete the program.
The Ministry of Education and Youth and the Office of the Prime Minister, through the Heart NSTA Trust, are teaming up to provide 8 weeks of skills training. After that, participants will get a 1-year employment placement with a government or private sector entity. Bro, all you have to do to get in the program is
be 17 years of age or older and have at least 3 CSEC subjects, including mathematics and English. You will also need 2 character references and must have graduated high school within the last year. It's for the most needy, so applicants must also demonstrate financial hardship. If you are interested, apply online at the Heart NSTA Trust's website or submit the form to your Member of Parliament's constituency office. The application period is open until August 31.
Last year, we saw over 13,000 victims. However, I am conscious and I'm aware that there are many more. There are children, there are victims in our community that are struggling with the reality of crime and trauma. Some of them individually and directly, and some of them indirectly in the community which they live. I would like to challenge you who are listening, watching this program, to make an effort to call the VSD, the Victim Services Division in the Ministry of Justice. Encourage these children to get help. Encourage, cause us to know so we can reach out to them to get help. The numbers to call are 876-618-3620 or 876-946-2014. Healing and justice for all victims of crime is not just our concern, but it should be the concern of all of us.
Jamaica's currency has a fresh new look. Introducing the new $50 note. The new $100 note. The new $500 note. The new $1,000 note. The new $2,000 note. The new $5,000 note. Jamaica's new banknotes, modern, more secure, and made to last.
Remember, gambling is just a game. Choose to gamble responsibly. Set a budget, avoid chasing losses, and stop gambling when you reach your money limit. For gambling help, call RISE 888-991-4146. A message from the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission.
Are you an entrepreneur producing an excellent Jamaican product or service? Did you know you can earn hard currency and more significant returns by exporting? Contact the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce to help propel your business along the export lane.
Everything you can produce, the Jamaicans overseas want it. We're not going to get rich by just bringing down the debt. We're going to get rich by exporting a lot more. So grow exports, create job opportunities, drive economic growth through exports to make Jamaica a richer and much more prosperous country.
Traveling to Jamaica? Submit your customs and immigration declaration online for faster processing. Visit the enterjamaica.com portal, complete and submit your declaration prior to departure. Upon arrival, proceed to the immigration kiosk and swipe your passport to confirm your trip details and declaration. Once done, proceed to the customs hall to retrieve your luggage and final clearance. The online C5, making air travel easier. You may contact us or the Passport Immigration and Citizenship Agency for more information.
It's here, Jamaica's new polymer banknotes. Polymer banknotes are produced from a thin, transparent and flexible plastic film. Why the transition from paper to polymer? Polymer banknotes stay cleaner, they're more difficult to counterfeit, and they last longer. Plus, special features on the notes, like those developed for the visually impaired, last for the entire lifespan of the notes. The introduction of polymer banknotes will increase the average circulation life of notes by at least 50%. As a result, orders for banknotes will be reduced, and Bank of Jamaica will realize savings. Look out for your new polymer banknotes.
Dengue is ordinarily a mild disease. Persons may get a fever, headache, joint and muscle pains. The illness is often resolved through rest and adequate hydration along with paracetamol to treat the accompanying fever. However, on occasions the illness can progress to severe dengue, which can result in organ failure, bleeding and severe fluid depletion that can lead to shock and even death. Therefore, it is important for persons who are experiencing fever, vomiting, severe abdominal pain, bleeding under the skin, feeling very weak, or getting confused to seek immediate attention. Let us work together to protect ourselves against dengue.
Money! So what you say, talk to me, right?
It takes so long, man. People and places for going, you know. Get them on the urban table number.
Have your nice. You know how much people me have to deal with before me reach here, sir? You're lucky.
Put 3 bills for number 5.
Wait. We can place the bet with you? Yeah, man. You see when you win with we, you get a little extra. So what you say?
Police, nobody move. Illegal gambling is a criminal offense. If convicted, you could face a fine of up to $1 million or up to 18 months in prison. When gambling, choose licensed and registered gaming establishments. Stop illegal gambling now. Call Crime Stop at 311 to report illegal gambling. You don't have to give your name. A message from the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission.
Can you imagine getting a marketable skill for free? Your government has made it possible for anyone wanting to learn a skill to get free training through the Heart and STA Trust. Learn a new skill and expand your horizons.
Today, we are read from Luke 23, 32 to 43. Then carry 2 criminals fi go kill them same time with Jesus. When them catch at the place we name the Skull, them nail up Jesus and the criminal them pon the cross them. One pon the right hand side of Jesus and the other one pon him left. Jesus say, Father God, pardon them. Them no know what them a do. Then them throw dice fi share up Jesus' clothes. The people them were turn up one side a watch, and the ruler them did a scan Jesus. Them say, him save other people, make him save himself, if him a really Christ. The soldier them come and take Jesus turn preke and give him sour wine. And I say, if you are the king for the Jew them, save yourself. One sign did even over Jesus' head where say, this are the Jew them king. One of the criminal them where did hang upside of Jesus start cuss him say, you are not the Christ. Save yourself and save we too. But the other criminals set him straight and say, you not afraid of God, like how you are dead like him. Them a punish the two of we for what we do, so we a get what we deserve. But the man ya not do nothing wrong. Then him say, Jesus, remember me when you come in your kingdom. Jesus said to him, say, me I tell you the truth. Today, you go there which part me there in a paradise. Luke 23, 32 to 43.
For little people, it's a really big world. A big world to discover and explore. And because discoveries aren't always easy to understand, little people need help to make sense of the big world. So help them make sense of the world. When you CPG, do PG. The Broadcasting Commission, your partner for a new day.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican.
We are Jamaican.
And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education
To the road conditions.
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
$1.3 trillion. That's the figure budgeted for the fiscal year 2024-2025, which begins on April 1. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Join PBCJ via live broadcast and on our online platforms to hear how the government is proposing to use these funds. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke will open the debate on Tuesday, March 12. Shadow Finance Minister Julian Robinson will have his say on Thursday, March 14. Opposition Leader Mark Golding will make his contribution on Tuesday, March 19. Prime Minister Andrew Holness will speak on Thursday, March 21, and on Tuesday, March 26, the Finance Minister will close the budget debate. It's your money, our money, the nation's money. PBCJ, the People's Station, bringing you the 2024-2025 budget debates live.
Jamaica, I can help you protect our citizens.
Jamaica Eye will play a part in increasing your public safety.
Jamaica Eye is part of an island-wide network of camera surveillance systems designed to increase the safety of you, our citizens. If you have a camera system outside your home or office facing a public space, log on to jamaicaeye.gov.jm today. Jamaica Eye, we're all connected. The Ministry of National Security, creating a safer and prosperous Jamaica.
Watch the trend, pick up the trend. This are the trend for all the youths them. Watch the trend, pick up the trend. TREND. Big up the trend for education, teachers and the students. A fully bright future, yes, that are the new trend. Better governance, partner with the parents. Follow the big trend, elevate the youth them. Improve the schools, track performance, access and attendance. From infant, primary to university students. Turn up the skills training, full steam, we are getting. Follow the big trend, elevate the schools, yeah. Watch the trend, pick up the trend. This are the trend for all the youths them. Watch the trend, pick up the trend. TREND. For more technology, yes, and better planning, quality education, that's what should be trending. From principals to EOs, everybody winning. Follow the ministry. We're changing the system. Watch the trend, pick up the trend.
This is Trend, Transforming Education for National Development, a program designed by the Ministry of Education and Youth to transform Jamaica's education system for a brighter tomorrow.
Jamaica's new banknotes are now in circulation. But can customers still use old banknotes? The old banknotes will be phased out over time, but can still be used to carry out your everyday transactions. Bank of Jamaica encourages Jamaicans to exchange old banknotes for new notes at commercial banks across the island.
Most Jamaicans will tell you corruption in politics is deep-rooted, and I just saw it said, and nothing can do about that. But actually, there is, and another 152 countries are doing it. It's called asset declaration, and it works best where citizens themselves understand it and help to ensure the law is enforced. Corruption happens when public officials abuse their power to benefit themselves, family, or associates. Jamaica's Integrity Commission Act was designed to prevent corruption, and here are 5 things you should know. 1. Under this law, every year MPs and senators must report what they earn, own, and owe, and if they don't, they'll be sanctioned. 2. Their report must include the same kind of information for their wife or husband and children. 3. If they get a gift worth more than $100,000,
network of
used to make sure government run right. Visit jamja.org to.
There are 21 parliamentarians appointed from both political parties to the upper house, also known as the Senate. And there are 63 members of parliament that we, the people, elect to the lower house, also known as the House of Representatives. To pass a law, there is a minimum of 6 stages required in each house. The process can begin in the upper house by a senator or in the lower house by your member of parliament. And their proposals for a new bill can certainly start with you, the citizen. Now, since the process often begins in the House of Representatives, let's start there. 1. The first stage begins with the introduction by the minister responsible for the bill, followed by the first reading of the bill by the clerk to the houses. This clerk is more like the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer for the Parliament. An announcement of the bill is published in the Gazette. This is a public newsletter that the government uses to inform the citizens of what the Parliament is doing on your behalf. 2. The second reading begins with a summary of the bill by the minister. The main reasons for the bill are discussed both by the government and opposition members to determine if Jamaicans would really be better off with the new law or changes to an existing law. A vote is taken by the House to determine if the bill will move to the committee stage. Sometimes before going to that stage, the minister responsible for the bill can recommend the use of a joint select committee. It's called joint as its members are taken from both the upper and lower house. To benefit from greater consultation, the committee is empowered to invite the public to share their views of the bill in writing or in person, and does so through radio, TV, and newspaper adverts. This Joint Select Committee submits its recommendations to the House of Representatives. The House debates this report, and a vote is taken to determine if the bill should go on to the committee stage, where it is examined by a committee of the whole House. Yes, that's the name. And that's what it is, a committee of all the members of Parliament that carefully examines each clause and makes improvements to ensure the bill will achieve its objectives. As chairman, the Speaker of the House monitors the process to make sure the rules of the House are obeyed and the process moves along smoothly. 4. The Committee of the whole House examines the bill clause by clause, then sends its recommendations for changes to the House of Representatives. This is called the report stage. 5. The bill then passes to the third reading to allow a final opportunity for MPs to make changes before it is sent to senators in the upper house. 6 to 10. In the upper house, the senators go through the same steps we just described. If any changes are made, the bill has to be returned to the House of Representatives for their discussion and approval. Now, if the bill had started in the upper house, it would also have to be returned to them for approval of any changes made by the lower house. 11. Throughout the entire process, the bill is being checked by the Legislative Council. That's the Parliament's lawyer. But before the last step, a copy is sent to the Attorney General of Jamaica for final review and certification. 12. If all is well, the bill is sent to receive the royal assent from the Governor General as the representative of the Queen, Elizabeth II. The bill is now an Act of Parliament. The Act is gazetted, and the rights of Jamaicans are further preserved and protected by a new law.
I am Jamaican.
You are Jamaican. We are Jamaican. And the national budget is our business because it impacts every Jamaican. From healthcare to education,
to the road conditions,
to security for my family. The national budget is my business.
No, sister. It is our business. The national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. Visit the Ministry of Finance's website at mof.gov.jm for more information.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we thine unworthy servants here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that, we having thy fair always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the results of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, and true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
You may be seated. Good afternoon, everyone. This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. It's indeed a great pleasure to welcome everyone to the Honorable House of Representatives today, Tuesday, March 26, 2024, for the conclusion of the budget debate. Let me make special welcome those who are seated in the gallery and those who have joined us online. Call of the roll.
Mr. Clarke. Here. Mr. Bartlett. Mr. Holdings. Here. Dr. Clarke. Dr. Chang. Ms. Grange. Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malawu-Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Cousins, Miss Crawford, Miss Daly, Miss Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Miss Hamilton, Miss Hannah, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Samuda, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Wright.
House Leader. Madam Speaker, the business of the House today is as stated by the agenda. And Madam Speaker, I would implore you to follow the order as stated. There will, of course, be no statement by ministers, and the sole item for the day will be the closing of the appropriations bill, and the debate will be taken, in fact, by the Minister of Finance and the Public Service, the Honorable Dr. Nigel Clarke. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, House Leader. Let me say, in addition to the members gathered here in the gallery, I've been informed by the Marshal that the Honorable Minister has his entire family here to support him today. Let me welcome you to the House. Statement by ministers. Announcements. Ms. Curtis. Just a brief comment prior to announcements. I have taken note of the many perspectives expressed in the public domain on my ruling regarding the tabling of reports from the Auditor General. Let me state categorically, any action taken by me was and will always be done with the sole intention of upholding the laws of Jamaica, as I am sworn to do. Having considered all of what has been said, I have taken note of the varying different legal perspective, and I continue to hold the view that in law there continues to be a dissonance in the interpretation of how the reports on public bodies should be tabled. I have taken a further decision to today table the reports which are in question, and additionally seek to further resolve the issues as it relates to the appropriate mechanism to table said reports, and will include, in addition to continued consultation, having a meeting, a discussion with the Auditor General, hopefully later this week.
Clarke.
Madam Speaker, in light of your advice to the Parliament just now, I'd like to ask just two questions. Firstly, you have indicated that you will proceed to table the reports that have been outstanding for 3 months today. And we believe that that is a good and correct move to make on your part. However, we still would like to understand the original basis for withholding them. And you did say that you had received a legal opinion from the Attorney General's chambers. And Madam Speaker, I think in light of everything and our various appeals to see that opinion, that you should provide us at the earliest opportunity, and we do believe that it should be today, with a sight of the opinion. And you did say that you would be having consultation with the Auditor General. We would like to be involved in that consultation as well. And finally, Madam Speaker, I thought you would have gone further today, because yesterday was a significant day in our Parliament when a letter which was sent to the Clarke became known to us. And it has caused us on this side tremendous distress, especially as we anticipate that the Clarke, well, we know that the Clarke is about to demit office, having served this Parliament for so long. And the tone of it, Madam Speaker, I don't think we as a Parliament could proceed today without having a discussion on this point. And for you, Madam Speaker, to indicate really what motivated that action yesterday in upgrading the Clarke, in disciplining the Clarke in the way that it was done in the public.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I do think that it's always fair comment to make a point at any statement made by the Speaker, by any member in the House. But to ask you at this point to enter into a discussion or debate on a matter of a member of this administrative arm of Parliament, in the presence of the member too, it's Madam Speaker, what is very clear is that there's a sensitivity too that we shouldn't ignore in this House. And the fact is that the Speaker and the Clerk are currently in discussion on the matter. And I would urge that we respect that, and that indeed an appropriate statement will be made at the end of those discussions. So and in fairness, both of us have had that discussion, and it disappoints me.
Madam Speaker, I hear what the leader of government business is saying, but this matter is now a public matter. It occurred largely because of the email that was sent to all of us, and with the letter. And Madam Speaker, I know that there might be discussions taking place, but I don't think the public would feel satisfied of your coming today, going through the process without saying something. We were really expecting that the letter would have been withdrawn today, Madam Speaker, and that is really our position. So, Madam Speaker, I'm hoping that you will say something on the matter before we proceed, especially in light of our call for the withdrawal of that letter.
Thank you, members. I note your request as it relates to further steps to be had with the Auditor General, and on the matter of the Clarke, I advise you, both from myself and the Clarke, that we are in dialogue and wish to say nothing else at this time. Clarke, announcements, please. Ms. Curtis, announcements.
Madam Speaker, yes.
As it relates to supplying the Parliament the legal opinion from the Attorney General's chamber, I remain in the same position I did when the ruling was given, in that the opinion of the Parliamentary Legal Counsel was circulated to the Parliament and the public. That has not changed. The Attorney General, sorry. No, the Attorney General. No.
We want to repeat our claim.
You can repeat, and I'm saying the Speaker's ruling, member, with absolute respect, is final in this regard. There is nothing to hide, but it is the Speaker's discretion. It is the Speaker's discretion to make a ruling having taken into consideration all the opinions received, which was done. I remain of the view that the reports are not properly being tabled. However, with reports that have been too back and forth from the Parliament to the Auditor General and back again, in the interest of ensuring that what is our ultimate aim, one of having the probe of our Auditor General and the findings of those reports available to the public, the continued issues as to the proper procedure in which to table these reports, I believe it is more important, particularly with another month to come until we come back to Parliament, to table the reports and then continue the dialogue with the Auditor General instead of holding same. And that is my decision. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: financial statements assessment regarding the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority, certified appropriation account for Tax Administration Jamaica, head 2056 for the financial year 2020-2021. Auditor General's Department Special Audit Report for the Financial Services Commission on the Human Resources and Procurement Procedures. Auditor General's Department Financial Statement Assessment of Public Bodies Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority, and the Auditor General's Department Special Audit Report for Tax Administration Jamaica, leasing arrangements.
Thank you. Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the House, motion for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, and please permit me, House Leader, before public business, to welcome Mr. K.D. Knight, who is here in the House, former Senator and Member of Parliament. today. Public business.
Madam Speaker, the continuation of the budget debate on the appropriations bill will now be entertained, and our speaker is, of course, the Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. the Honorable Nigel Clarke, and Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Northwestern. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Let us make welcome to his feet the Minister of Finance and the Public Service, the member from St. Andrew Northwest, to make his presentation on the closing of the debate. Members.
Madam Speaker, I rise this afternoon to close the budget debate on the appropriation bill for the upcoming 2024-25 fiscal year. And I begin, Madam Speaker, by taking the opportunity to welcome Jamaicans here in Jamaica and in the diaspora, and those tuning in on radio or television in Jamaica, or through any one of the number of social media channels, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, or other online platforms. Thank you for your participation. Madam Speaker, the debate has been vibrant, passionate, and colorful. On behalf of the people of Jamaica, I thank the contributors to the debate, the Most Honorable Prime Minister for delivering a presentation of substance. That demonstrates the achievement of this government, and a presentation that delivered hope. Born in a Spanish Town boardhouse, studying hard at school, take out your student loan, and working for an NGO before rising to become Prime Minister, you are an inspiration to millions of Jamaicans. You keep moving the ball forward for the Jamaican people, Most Honorable Prime Minister. I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his presentation. Last year I said there may have been a few yellow card moments, but this year, Madam Speaker, the Opposition Leader definitely earned a red card. Red card, red card. But, Madam Speaker, we thank him for his contribution nonetheless. Madam Speaker, I also thank the opposition spokesman on finance for his budget presentation. For him, I have to use a cricketing analogy. He bowled some full tosses, Madam Speaker. Not perfect, but he didn't pitch it the way I like it, which is short or right off the off stump. But we thank him for his contribution, Madam Speaker. Thanks to the Speaker, who has been doing an excellent job in maintaining the order of these proceedings. They don't know how much Jamaica loves you, Madam Speaker. Thanks to the parliamentary staff, to the Deputy Clerk, to the Clerk, marshals, stenographers, and all who work at the Houses of Parliament for your dedication and professionalism. Thanks, Madam Speaker, to the Financial Secretary and the entire staff at the Ministry of Finance. And thanks to my security detail and driver who work as hard as I do. And of course, Madam Speaker, I express thanks to my family for their loving support. And of course, the members of the media who do a fabulous job in covering these debates, thanks to you as well. Madam Speaker, I'll start the debate from the points, a couple of things that we definitely agree on. One was the suggestion by the Leader of the Opposition about the deadline for filing taxes in a financial year. Currently, the deadline is March 15th, and a couple of years ago, definitely before COVID, I had expressed publicly my desire to see that date turned to April, changed to sometime in April, with the financial year remaining the same, April 1st to March 31st. But the deadline for filing would be in April. Madam Speaker, that would provide Jamaica with much greater fiscal certainty, because the filing month is the month of largest tax revenues. And for that to come on the last day or the last month of the tax year and in the last 2 weeks of the tax year means that you, whether you like it or not, you take inordinate risks, because you've already, for the 11 months, spent according to the estimates of expenditure. So Jamaica would be much more secure if revenues associated with the end of the year came in, end of the financial year, of one financial year, end of the revenues associated with the end of the previous calendar year comes in at the beginning of the next fiscal year. Having made that suggestion a few years ago, the Leader of the Opposition revisited it, and Madam Speaker, it is something that we are still interested in. The challenge with it is that in the first year that you make that move, it would have a significant impact on your revenues, and you would run quite a deficit, because you would take the month with the largest revenue inflows and move it into the next financial year. So this is something that we're in a better position to do when we have reached our goal in terms of our fiscal target goal, and we can make that change, which would make our fiscal trajectory more secure going forward. Madam Speaker, the opposition spokesperson on finance made the suggestion about improving productivity and productivity through transportation of people to work and from work by introducing light rail to Jamaica. Well, Madam Speaker, as we are on this side at pains of pointing out, there's hardly a unique idea in government with 100 and nearly 200 countries in the world. It's a virtual laboratory of policies that at any point in time can be extended to apply to Jamaica. I certainly have been invited to presentations at the Office of the Prime Minister, where PCJ, when it existed, made presentations on light rail coming to Jamaica. The member worked in the ministry in which PCJ was housed. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's aware of the thinking that probably applied during their time and has continued into ours. Those who work in that ministry have, on a number of occasions, provided presentations on the possibility of light rail in Jamaica, probably 2 lines at first, a east-west and a north-south, and the Prime Minister has, in receiving those presentations, given directions for further development of those ideas. Development is not at the stage that it could form part of a budget debate presentation, but it's good to know that there is some convergence in that regard. Madam Speaker, it falls to me to address points raised, claims, etc., that are made in the budget debate presentation. And I do so, Madam Speaker. I wish I didn't have to, but the points haven't been made or the claims haven't been made. I am duty-bound to respond. Madam Speaker, when the Leader of the Opposition made his contribution to the budget debate, he included the words, "When the former Speaker was forced to resign as a result of the Integrity Commission investigation, the move to replace her with the wife of the Prime Minister so that the head of Parliament is now the spouse of the head of government does not sit well with the tradition that the Speaker must act independently of the government of the day. Madam Speaker, as others have pointed out, we on this side, and there are others on the outside, who thought that that was low. Firstly, Madam Speaker, the Speaker of the House served as Deputy Speaker of the House for 3 years, between September 2020 and November 2023. And during that time, she acted as Speaker on several occasions. So it was the Deputy Speaker who was elected to replace the outgoing Speaker, not simply the wife. The fact that in the statement or the speech you refer to her as the wife, not recognizing her 3-year tenure as Deputy Speaker and therefore the natural successor, is, in my view, disrespectful to the highest degree. Madam Speaker, women, like men, are individuals in their own right who ought not to be defined by their relationship with either men or, in the case of, when you do this, you subordinate the professional role of the woman or the man. Wife, mother, sister are roles that women sometimes play, much like men are sometimes husbands, brothers, and fathers. But in a professional setting, it does not sit well with the tradition of respect within our society that has been that for you to refer to any female parliamentary colleague by her marital relationship with her husband. By all means, talk about the Speaker's decisions, criticize them if you must, but leave the wife alone. It was out of order, Madam Speaker, and the opposition leader can do better. It reminds me of when the member from East Portland, campaigning in her own right, was derogatorily referred to as the wife of Mr. Vaz. And she won't be anything but the wife of Minister Vaz. There's a trend. Of course she's the wife of Minister Vaz. But in the context of the campaign, she was the Jamaica Labour Party candidate for the seat. It would have been better had the opposition leader said the move to replace her with the Deputy Speaker of the House, who happens to be the wife of the Prime Minister, etc., etc., etc. But completely ignoring her position in this House, yes, Madam Speaker, was absolutely, and reducing her to only one component, that of wife, was disrespectful, Madam Speaker, and should not be repeated. Madam Speaker, the Deputy Speaker acted, as I said, many times as Speaker for 3 years. And never once, to the best of my knowledge, did any member rise to his or her feet to provide any objection on the account of a marital relationship with the Prime Minister. When the Deputy Speaker was nominated to fill the role of Speaker, her nomination was seconded by none other than the leader of opposition business, the member from East Kingston and Port Royal, Mr. Philip Paulwell, who rose to his feet and said, Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion. The Speaker was then unanimously elected by both sides of the House with cheers and applause. Madam Speaker, the former leader of the opposition, the member from St. Andrew East Central. Now, just for people listening, after people listening don't know East Central, says Mr. Peter Phillips. A few sittings later, without invitation or solicitation, rose to his feet on his own accord and addressed the Speaker directly, looking at her and saying, a major impulse that brought me here today was to see you in your elevated position. Madam Speaker, this was greeted with spontaneous and rapturous applause by both sides of the aisle, including many on that side who applauded that remark. Madam Speaker, the opposition welcomed the promotion of the Deputy Speaker to Speaker and expressed no issues of principle. Madam Speaker, principle is principle. Principle is not something that changes with the wind. Principle is not something that changes when circumstances get tough. Principles are principles, Madam Speaker. Principle is not something that changes because you disagree. Principle is not something that changes because of political opportunity. Principle is principle. And given that the leader of the government opposition business, his full-throttled endorsement of the Deputy Speaker's elevation, the opposition's leader's statement last week, Madam Speaker, publicly undermines and emasculates the member and sends an unmistakable message that we cannot trust what any of them over there says. Because at any time, the opposition leader is likely at any day, any time, any place to just flip-flop, to contradict, and to undermine. Now, look, the opposition leader has a disagreement with the Speaker's position on a specific matter. And I support his right to disagree on a specific matter. But rather than address that matter specifically, he raises an objection in principle to her appointment, despite the opposition having supported that principle in the past. That, Madam Speaker, is what you call unprincipled. It is flip-flop, and it is not leadership that you can trust. And we find it over and over again, Madam Speaker, even in the same speech. The presentation includes unprincipled positions. Madam Speaker, having met, Madam Speaker, on another matter last year with a few opposition MPs who shall remain nameless on the principle of the salary reform for parliamentarians, I introduced the changes via statement in this House in May of 2023. The member from St. Andrew Southeastern, who is the opposition spokesman of finance, his name is Mr. Julian Robinson. He rose to his feet and he said, in the full view of cameras, publicly, the opposition takes no issue with what the minister has announced. Madam Speaker, without the opposition support, and in this House, Madam Speaker, the public support in this House, as demonstrated by the member from St. Andrew Southeastern, that adjustment for parliamentarians would not have happened. Which is why I met with a group of them before. And they know that. And it is the failure, Madam Speaker, wait. It is the failure of opposition and governments of the day in the past. There's a member here in this House who is visiting from a previous administration, and he can tell you that is the failure of opposition and government to agree in the past that stymied previous efforts on parliamentary compensation. Although the opposition member with finance responsibility got up and publicly gave support on behalf of the opposition to my statement outlining the details, days later, Madam Speaker, the opposition of the opposition leader, meaning the opposition run by the opposition leader, issues a statement that completely contradicted the support offered by the opposition finance spokesman, undermined him, emasculated him, Madam Speaker, and meant we cannot trust what he says unless Mark is present. seemingly for political gain. Seemingly for political gain. He emasculates his own colleague who he appointed. That is unprincipled, Madam Speaker. That is flip-flop, and that is not leadership that you can trust. It sends, Madam Speaker, the unmistakable message that we cannot trust. We cannot trust what they say. No, this is a big problem, you know. No, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, cannot be trusted. This, Madam Speaker, is a problem. It's a problem for Jamaica. And you know why it's a problem for Jamaica? Because government and opposition have to work together. Sometimes. Yeah? And so the opposition leader contradicting, undermining, and emasculating the very people he has appointed, Madam Speaker, is inimical to constructive working relationship. For example, Madam Speaker, it is customary for the House leader on the government side and the leader of opposition business on that side to get together and to talk about matters concerning the House and how issues are going to be dealt with. And, Madam Speaker, in those conversations, they have to make decisions on the fly. They have to agree on the fly, whether it's behind here or it's on the phone. Madam Speaker, the leader of opposition in the House has been in this House for 30 years, including the Senate. 30 years. We have to be able to rely on his word as leader of opposition business. But how can we rely on what he says when the opposition leader forces flip-flop, unprincipled behavior? And he emasculates and undermines his own colleagues, Madam Speaker. It may not be good for their party, but it's certainly not good for Jamaica. And the member from St. Andrew Southeastern, who has responsibility to the shadow. He's an opposition spokesman on finance. How can we rely on his word when he's publicly ridiculed, emasculated, and undermined in that way? That is not leadership, Madam Speaker, that anyone can trust. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader can publicly emasculate Philip and Julian. They may not have people to speak up for them, but let me tell you this: don't touch Juliet. Madam Speaker, under this government, even after the worst economic crisis in our history, Jamaica's macroeconomic fundamentals are the strongest they've been for 50 years. And we are leveraging that economic stability in the people's interest. We're entrenching fiscal responsibility by strengthening fiscal rules and birthing a new institution, the Fiscal Commission, to increase the incentives for fiscal sustainability and magnify the disincentives for pursuing a path of fiscal recklessness. We Jamaicans have paid a heavy price for the absence of fiscal responsibility, Madam Speaker. And it is my fervent hope that fiscal responsibility will become not only rooted institutionally, but will be firmly anchored in hearts and minds. Now, Madam Speaker, the opposition leader advances a narrative of rescuing Jamaica in the 2012 to 2016 period to suggest that fiscal responsibility started then. Madam Speaker, I have a lot of respect for former Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller, for her work, for her achievements, and for Peter Phillips, the finance minister in her administration. But I do not believe that that justifies a distortion of the facts. It was Prime Minister Bruce Golding and Audley Shaw who had the audacity and the courage to point out that the economic policies of the 1989 to 2007 administration were unsustainable and reckless. Madam Speaker, for periods during that 18-year stretch, just two expenditure items, interest and salaries, exceeded tax revenues. Just imagine that. No garbage truck, no bus, no chalk, no asphalt, no police car, no uniform, nothing for the persons on path, nothing for pensions, just interest and wages alone exceeded tax revenues. That administration, Madam Speaker, put up the chart with the deficits, ran large deficits for 11 consecutive years between 1996-97 and 2006-07. The charts showing the deficits will soon come up. Very large deficits. Madam Speaker, if you look at the deficits here, these are the deficits between 1996-97 and 2006-07. Deficits 5-6% year after year after year. These deficits became unsustainable, and it should not be surprising that it was during this period that represented one of the fastest rises in Jamaica's debt, a 5-fold increase in our debt, or 500%, Madam Speaker, in this 11-year period. From 184 billion, Madam Speaker, in March 1996 to $923 billion in March 2007. The 1989 to 2007 administration. And if you start earlier, there was a 9-fold increase, 950% increase in Jamaica's debt from March of 1992 to March of 2007. 950%, Madam Speaker. From about 90-something billion to 923 billion. So this, Madam Speaker, is the ferocious, torrential, and unsustainable fiscal current that the Bruce Golding administration stepped into. Okay, you have a current that is blowing fast. The pace at which the debt is increasing is 500% in 11 years. That is what they stepped into. And they had the courage, Madam Speaker, to call this out as unsustainable. It was during the period of unsustainable deficits, Madam Speaker, that the prevailing wisdom was ta-ta. That is a disengagement from the IMF and the World Bank and their cheap financing, along with their sustainable policy prescriptions, in favor of expensive financing from capital markets. It was Bruce Golding and Audley Shaw who saw that ta-ta and 500% increases in debt over 11 years was destroying Jamaica. And they led the process to re-engage, Madam Speaker, with the IMF and the World Bank. The era of fiscal responsibility started with them. You'll see. You'll see it. Madam Speaker, it was in the Golding administration that the government, which lost $1 billion in Air Jamaica, was sold, releasing the Jamaican people from this major source of debt escalation. It was during this period the Sugar Company of Jamaica was sold, releasing another major contributor to debt escalation. It was in this period that the Financial Audit and Administration Act was significantly amended as part of a broader financial reform effort. And these reforms were aimed at improving fiscal responsibility. It was during this period that fiscal rules were introduced to Jamaica for the first time, Madam Speaker. There was fiscal disrule before then. For the first time, Madam Speaker, the tax expenditure statement was submitted to Parliament and has since become an annual practice and now a legislative requirement. They implemented the first debt exchange to address unsustainability of debt. Now, faced with what was then the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, the fiscal accounts worsened. Yeah? But the pace of debt accumulation slowed considerably. From an approximate 1,000% increase in debt over the PNP administration, the debt grew by approximately 70% over 4 years. So we went from a pace of 1,000% over 18 years and 500% over 11 years. You can do the math. 500 divided by 11, okay, to one where the debt moved now by 70% over 4 years. Okay? So when you, with this torrential cascading of fiscal unsustainability, not something that just stops overnight. What you have to do first is to slow the pace of debt accumulation, and they achieved that from a 1,000% over 18 years, 500% over 11 years, and then 70% over 4 years. Yeah? So the deficits continued under them. They continued. And during the worst part of the crisis, the deficit got really large. But the debt accumulation slowed. So you look at this chart, Madam Speaker, and you look at debt accumulation across different periods. You'll see from April 1992 to March 2008, and I use the end of the fiscal year, even though governments change in between. There was a 952% increase in the debt accumulation during that period of time. That is unmistakable fact. Nothing they say can change that. Nothing. And then you look at the next period, Madam Speaker, which is the period April 2008 to March 2012. The debt accumulation dropped from 952% to 66%. Yeah? And then under the Portia Simpson administration, it dropped even further to 24%. And then under us, it has dropped even further to 6%, Madam Speaker, over 7 years.
I remember that era very well.
All right? So if you look at this graph and you ask, when did fiscal responsibility begin? When did we begin to get a hold of the runaway debt situation that we had in Jamaica? It's unmistakable. Unmistakable. We have been fed a narrative, Madam Speaker, that is misleading. Of course the program failed. It failed. Absolutely it did. It failed. However, Madam Speaker, it didn't fail because fiscal responsibility was absent. It failed, Madam Speaker, because there wasn't the social consensus in the society for fiscal responsibility.
Members, the minister's time for speaking has expired. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, the member's time having been expired, I beg to move that the speaker's time be extended sufficiently to allow him to complete his presentation. May it please you.
The question is that the minister be allowed. The question is that the minister be allowed sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker, members of the House. So we've been fed this narrative, Madam Speaker, which is based on a fact that the IMF agreement did collapse. But it did not collapse because the government didn't have fiscal responsibility. Yeah. It collapsed because fiscal responsibility, there was not a social consensus in the society at that point about the need for fiscal responsibility. And as a result, unions, the agreements that the unions were prepared to accept, breached the terms of the agreement. But it's unmistakable that by switching from the fiscal policy of the prior period, 1989 all the way to 2007, and engaging the multilaterals, Jamaica was able to slow down immensely the accumulation of debt, Madam Speaker. And that is the true measurement, ultimately, of fiscal responsibility. Now, my position, Madam Speaker, is that it's not that there was not a difference between 2007 and 11 and 2012 and 2016. I'm not saying there wasn't a difference. But what I'm saying is the difference was not around the policy of fiscal responsibility of government. Madam Speaker, the difference is that the social conditions were entirely different, and they were entirely different in large part, Madam Speaker, because Prime Minister Holness had the honesty and the courage in 2011 to tell Jamaicans the truth about the need for fiscal discipline. I was there, I was with him. I visited the IMF with him in October of 2011. And he came back determined to tell the Jamaican people the truth. And he went. It may not have been the most politically elegant way of expressing it, but it was the truth. And so what you had happening, Madam Speaker, is that an outgoing government had lost on the platform of promising fiscal discipline, and an incoming government that had no choice but to implement it. And Jamaica never had a better chance. No, it's fact. Fact. Madam Speaker, to the credit of the 2012 to 2016 administration, they made use of that chance. But to this day, I cannot understand that if fiscal responsibility is your thing, and it's been such a great achievement, why campaign on someone's house? If you embrace it and believe it, why didn't you speak it? Madam Speaker, they did not speak it because fiscal responsibility is not core to who they are. Madam Speaker, the facts are that in the 2012 to 2016 period, the administration found itself in a position where there were no other options. The time came for Tata. Time came for run with it. And they found themselves in a deeply intrusive extended fund facility arrangement from 2013 onwards, where they had to do as they were told. So yes, the IMF is fiscally responsible, and individuals in that cabinet may have a claim to being fiscally responsible, Madam Speaker, but the PNP cannot claim to be fiscally responsible, as history will show that the PNP government has never been fiscally responsible when they have a choice. Madam Speaker, examine the record from 1972 to 1980, and examine the record from 1989 to 2007, when they had choice. Fiscal responsibility is not determined by when you have no choice and your hands are tied. Implementing fiscal responsible policies when you have no choice in the matter and your hands are tied is not a demonstration of fiscal responsibility. Jamaica ran out of options, and they were under the watchful eye of the IMF, thank God, and individuals did good work during that time. But there was no choice in the matter. Under this government, we have had choice. We graduated from an IMF program in 2019. We went through COVID on our own steam with homegrown policies, homegrown ideas. We displayed fiscal responsibility before the crisis, during the crisis, after the crisis, leading Jamaica to one of the fastest, most complete recoveries in the Western Hemisphere. We piloted Jamaica through the worst economic storms in our history, Madam Speaker, on our own. That is fiscal responsibility. You demonstrate fiscal responsibility when you have choice, when you have lots of choice, and you still decide to do the responsible thing. So don't come here and tell anyone about fiscal responsibility when your party has never exhibited it when it had the privilege of choice. The only thing you can point to is when you were locked into a vice made by 18 years of fiscal recklessness and you had no choice whatsoever, and thank God you had to implement. And, Madam Speaker, I want you to understand what my argument. Nothing takes away from the individual effort and achievement during that period. There was remarkable individual effort. I am saying that institutionally, the party that formed the government, Madam Speaker, has not to date, during a period that they were in government and they had choice, demonstrated with that choice fiscal responsibility. That is undeniable and incontrovertible. We demonstrate fiscal responsibility of our own free will, and we're not afraid to talk to people about it. It requires a commitment to principle, which does not change when the sun is out or when it rains. Principle is principle. With that kind of leadership, Madam Speaker, that they have demonstrated, emasculation of senior people and flip-flops and U-turns, you cannot trust them, because when it gets difficult and the pressure mounts and the NEC starts to bark, they will turn on any principle. Even today, Madam Speaker, we have funding from the Resilience and Sustainability Fund of the IMF. But due to the performance of Jamaica, we have policy freedom, and we still choose to be fiscally responsible. Now, Madam Speaker, while I'm on this point, I want to just clear up a piece of misinformation that's often in the public domain. When the then opposition leader, Portia Simpson Miller, famously told Jamaica that she'd have concluded an IMF agreement in 2 weeks, well, we know it took 40 times as long. Now, Madam Speaker, at the end of the Bruce Golding administration, Jamaica had $2 billion in foreign exchange reserves. But it took time to conclude a follow-up agreement with the fund, and by November 2013, Jamaica's foreign exchange reserves had dwindled to $835 million. They like to misremember this. And if you look at what they tweet and so on, they believe that administration started with $835 million. Nothing no go so at all. That the Portia Simpson Miller administration started with $2 billion in net international reserves, and they ended with $2.2 billion in net international reserves. And approximately $1 billion of it, or half, was represented by borrowed reserves or certificates of deposits or CDs. Madam Speaker, we took the baton with $2.2 billion of reserves, and now there are $4.7 billion of reserves. And CDs have been reduced dramatically to only $85 million.
That's all?
Out of the 4.7. Madam Speaker, there was a time that the three words,
That's amazing.
the screens, there was a time, Madam Speaker, that the three words that would confuse the opposition were Jamaica Labour Party. Madam Speaker, over the last 7 years, something else that now confuses the opposition, Madam Speaker, is no new taxes. If you don't believe me, look at their faces when I say it again. No new taxes for 7 consecutive years. Madam Speaker, it makes them delirious because of Jamaica's economic history. They know the potency of that. So it makes them talk all kind of things that are not true, and things sometimes that don't make any sense. Exactly. Madam Speaker, I want you to pay attention to me in particular here. The opposition leader in his presentation puts up a chart, Madam Speaker, that purports to show revenue growth over the period of this government. This is the chart he puts up. And Madam Speaker, I don't know any other way to say it other than I have not seen a more deceptive chart in this House than this. Madam Speaker, he shows 2015-16. He does not show 2016-17. He does not show 2017-18. He does not show 2018-19. Nor 2019-20. And he certainly does not show 2020-21. Wait. Madam Speaker, when was COVID again? When was COVID? What year? 2020? So he's showing a chart of revenues of this administration that deliberately leaves out the COVID year and the years after. And then he shows 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24 projections, Madam Speaker. It's like he's playing peekaboo. Peekaboo. That's a chart there. Him show 2015-16, leave out all of the other years, and him playing peekaboo. Peekaboo. Peekaboo.
You don't look surprised, man.
The first question, Madam Speaker, is why would he do this? Why would he do it? Why would he hide the period 2016-17 to 2020-21? Why would he do that? Why would he do that? Red card, Madam Speaker, for him. Red card. He then says, Madam Speaker, that revenues have doubled, Madam Speaker, and that, I would say, over 9 years, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that the point? That revenue is going up in an environment of no new taxes? Madam Speaker, there is no PNP government that has presided over Jamaica with a 9-year stretch of continuously increasing tax revenues in real terms without the imposition of any new taxes. They're simply confused, and in their confusion present charts that skip over years and are therefore deceptive, Madam Speaker. The average annual rate of, and I'm going to show you, the average annual rate of increases in tax revenues over the entire period, Madam Speaker, is 9.4% per annum. That's the compounded annual increase in tax revenues over the period budgeted for 24-25, going all the way back to actual 2015-2016. Yeah? What happened, Madam Speaker, and what the opposition leader, in my view, I think is deceptively excludes, it's disingenuous. He excludes the COVID contraction in revenues, Madam Speaker, and in the revenues declined by 13% or $73 billion, and the recovery, Madam Speaker, the recovery from that low, no, go back to the chart, please. The recovery from that low, Madam Speaker, has been accelerated as compared to the trend. So when you look at the revenue growth the year after COVID versus the COVID year, it went up by 22%. Yeah. But in that year, when you compare it to the year before COVID, it was just 6%. But he shows the 22%, doesn't show the decline, and makes a meal of it, thinking that nobody is going to find him out. Red card, Madam Speaker. Red card. So let's go back to the table as it should have been. We're not afraid to hide anything. Show the whole thing. Don't cover it up playing peekaboo. That is what it looks like, Madam Speaker. And what you'll see is that in the last year of their administration, tax revenues went up by 11%. And in 16-17, it went up by 11% for us too. And then 8% the year after, and 9% the year after, and 7% the year after. And then it declined by double digits. So when there is recovery to get back up to where you were, of course there's going to be an accelerated growth, Madam Speaker. He shows the accelerated growth alone, as if to suggest that that characterizes the entire period. Madam Speaker, that is nothing short of utter deception. And Madam Speaker, to compound that deception, Madam Speaker, move to the next chart if you can, please. What he does, he adds up those 4 years, and he says, his verbatim quote, over the 4 years, fiscal year 21 to 22 through to fiscal year 24-25, tax collections have increased by 419 billion. 419 billion of additional taxes has been collected from the Jamaican people over the last 4 years. Man, this is just barefaced, misleading, and just disingenuous. First of all, there aren't additional taxes. There are additional tax revenues. And the deception, Madam Speaker, is that he is counting from the depth of COVID when revenues declined by $73 billion in 1 year. So if you look at the column, the third column from the left, that has it's the dollar increase over prior year. And you look at the 4 rows in blue, 110 billion, 136, 103, 68. He adds those up and says 400 billion of tax increases in the last 4 years. Now, what does 110 relate to? The 110 is the increase from the COVID year when revenues sank from 579 billion to 505 billion, an increase of 110. So, Madam Speaker, what we experienced is a recovery, Madam Speaker, that was above the mean rate, but the average rate of growth over the 9-year period, Madam Speaker, is 9%. Now, thank God our revenues recovered. Thank God. Or else we could not have allocated $200 billion to public sector compensation. We could not be doing the Spark program. We could not be buying 100 JUTC buses. We could not be doing 50 garbage trucks. We could not be giving income tax breaks. We could not be raising the pension exemption or the age exemption. We could not be implementing a reverse income tax credit. Madam Speaker, we could not do any of those things without revenue. Madam Speaker, gaslighting is an insidious form of manipulation. Yes. Victims of gaslighting are deliberately and systematically fed false or incomplete information that leads them to question what they know to be true. They may end up doubting their memory, their perception, or even their sanity. Madam Speaker, the commentary on a table that omits, that starts to talk about revenues under this government and omits critical information of COVID and the years before, Madam Speaker, represents gaslighting by misleading the public into thinking there's something going on with over-the-top revenue, when in fact it is good news. It is entirely explainable, and he needs to omit relevant information to present a distorted picture. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader advances the false argument that revenue increases are a result of indirect taxation. Clearly, he is forgetting that it's this administration that reduced GCT by 1.5 percentage points. Revenue increases, Madam Speaker, are a result of increased economic activity. Them just winging it, Madam Speaker. Them not understand. Jamaica's fiscal data is publicly available. Madam Speaker, when you look at the growth in personal income tax, when you look at the growth in personal income tax revenue, though we raised the threshold substantially to 1.5 million, income tax revenue has grown from $190 billion in 2015-16, grown by a total of $190 billion, or 145% cumulatively, or a compounded annual rate of 10.5%, Madam Speaker. You hear what I just said? Income tax revenue has grown over that period by $190 billion. faster than the average growth rate of revenues. It has outpaced revenue growth. In addition, Madam Speaker, or not in addition, just remind you that revenues have increased substantially as unemployment declined from 13% to 4%. And we had, under this administration, 30 quarters of economic growth. Broken by COVID, yeah, but you add up the two periods, 20 and 30 quarters of economic growth. Man, if it's not occurred to you, there is no administration in 50 years that has presided over, collectively, 30 quarters of economic growth, Madam Speaker. Now, what do you think happens in such an environment? Income tax revenues increase. As at 2022, there were 200,000 more cars on the road compared to 2016. Education tax revenue similarly increased by 152% over the period, or $32 billion, for a compounded annual increase of 10.8% per annum, outpacing overall revenue growth. Madam Speaker, under our Minister of Tourism, travel tax is up. It's up by 236% over that period. That's an average annual compounded growth of 14.4% and represents $24 billion more in revenue than in 2015-16. And one that nobody has been paying attention to is that tax revenue from betting, gaming, and lotteries has increased by 313% over the same period, Madam Speaker, or an average annual compounded rate of 17%, delivering almost $9 billion more into government coffers than in 2015-16. So, Madam Speaker, when you add those four line items of revenue alone, income tax, education tax, travel tax, they account for $255 billion, or more than 50% of the revenue growth experience. And the growth in those items exceeds the growth in GCT and special consumption tax. In fact, GCT and special consumption tax grew at slower compounded annual rates of growth. And in the case of special consumption tax, it grew at a rate that is slower than the average growth. So they just have it in their brain, but they don't bother to do the analysis. Don't bother to look at the data. They just talk from the hip. And because he's a big man in society, Tapanaris, and believe, so we're going to just accept it. Red card for that attitude. Red card for that attitude. Then give me the red card. Red card. Red card. Red card. Red card. Red card. Right? Coming up here and expect that because of Mr. Panaris, we're going to believe what he says. See the table there? See the data there? Everybody can see it for themselves. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader ludicrously and misleadingly states that tax revenue of the population increased, well, from 190,000 per person to 340,000 per person. Madam Speaker, since this government came to office, hear me out on this. Hear me on this. Him is out talking that tax revenue per person has gone from 190,000 to 340,000. Him now watch what we're going on now. Him just a wing it. Madam Speaker, under this government, since this government came to office, the economy has doubled in size. And it's on that chart, from $1.688 trillion to $3.289 trillion. Now, if there's no new tax and the economy double, then tax revenue must double too? Who is he really trying to fool? This aspect of his presentation shows contempt, Madam Speaker, for the Jamaican people, with these deceptive claims advanced by leaving information out. under this government, the average economic output of every Jamaican has nearly doubled from approximately $614,936 to $1,198,470, Madam Speaker, by March of 2025. So again, I say, even with no new taxes, tax revenues per person doubles along with the doubling of economic output per person. Now, Madam Speaker, let me just talk about tax revenues as a percentage of GDP. Let me begin this section, Madam Speaker, by just a definition of tax expenditure. One second. Tax expenditures, Madam Speaker, are defined in our tax expenditure statements as any revenue loss that occurs as a result of specific provisions that lead to a reduction in tax payable by a specific tax type, taxpayer activity. The Tax Policy Center defines tax expenditures as special provisions of the tax code, such as exclusions, deductions, deferrals, and credits that benefit specific activities or groups of taxpayers. All right? So tax expenditures are legitimate, but they are expenditures in that they reduce tax revenue. The opposition leader's presentation included the fact that tax revenues as a percentage of GDP moved from 24% in 2015-16 and is projected to be 28% by 2024-25. And tax expenditures are pertinent to the explanation of this observation. So every year, Madam Speaker, since 2011, I'd like to deny that anything happened. Since 2011, the government publishes a tax expenditure statement. And it's a very hard document to understand. Yeah? So it does not necessarily kind of see the light of day. Tax expenditure statement. And the explanations for this observation are threefold, and I'll just deal with the first two in this presentation. The first is that tax compliance has increased, which is great, meaning that we collect more of what is on the books. The second reason, Madam Speaker, is that tax exemptions have largely been codified and put into law. There's increased transparency and predictability about tax exemptions. And in terms of tax exemptions, everyone knows what they can get and what they cannot. Madam Speaker, we have been very judicious with tax expenditures. Tax waivers over the past 9 years have been limited to no more than 10 million per month, and long may this continue. As such, Madam Speaker, tax expenditures which would normally reduce tax revenues do not have as ample an opportunity as would have existed in the past. Now, I have a chart on the tax expenditures for you to understand what I'm saying. This here, Madam Speaker, is the tax expenditures of Jamaica from 2008 to 2022. 2023 is not yet available. The year is not complete. And what you'll see is that in the past, tax expenditures as a percentage of GDP were 4%, 5%, 6%. That represents, and in 2013, it peaked at 8%. That represents revenue that's on the books, but that we give away through deductions and exemptions and credits and waivers. Okay? And a big part of our reform has been to codify these as much as is possible and to reduce them. And as far as discretionary tax waivers are concerned, we have had a policy of no more than 10 million per month over the past 9 years. I believe that discretionary tax waivers were similarly limited under the EFF program. So, Madam Speaker, what happened is that tax expenditures, if you were to compare the period that was put in the chart, decreased from 3.9% to 2.47% over the period 2015 to 2022. And when you add those back and you look at tax revenue before tax expenditures, what you find is that the variation, Madam Speaker, is not what it seems to be. It's much more stable. What explains the differential is, Madam Speaker, that we are allowing far fewer tax expenditures today than were allowed in the past. So when you adjust for tax expenditures, you realize that tax revenue before tax expenditures was 28.3% in 2015-16. Yeah? 21-22, 28.9%. 22-23, 29.8. There is still a movement, but not a movement as significant as would exist if we did not show the tax expenditures, Madam Speaker. Yes, so I'm adding, but the tax expenditure statement is also submitted. This one I'm not claiming that you're deceiving. This one you picked up, I'm not claiming that. This one, we have tax expenditure statements, Madam Speaker, and the tax expenditure statements show, Madam Speaker, that when you look at our tax revenues as a proportion of GDP, before tax expenditures, it is much more even. What is happening is that the government, more of the revenue that's on the books is coming to the government, and we are not giving away. And who benefits from tax? Well, a lot. Yeah, it's usually, businesses. Right? So this is in the interest of the people that tax expenditures have been declining over time, and I hope that that can continue, even though you do something like Harmony Coal, tax expenditures are going to go up. Yeah? But again, we will totally be transparent on that when that time comes. Madam Speaker, in May 2023, the Leader of the Opposition declared that Jamaica's income tax threshold should be increased by 40% to 2.1 million. No numbers, no analysis, no costing. 4 months later, in September 2023, 4 months later, he changes his mind, flip-flop again, calling instead for a 100% increase in the income tax threshold. Again, no numbers, no analysis, no costing. Them just a wing it, Madam Speaker, unprincipled positions, shifting in the wind, flip-flop, flip-flop. The whole country waited to hear how Mr. Golding would finance this. Commentators were public with their expectation that Mr. Golding would outline how he would finance the doubling of the threshold. Headlines of the newspapers and the media houses, commentators, government, Golding must outline 3 million income tax threshold plan in budget presentation. And commentators specifically, who are named and I won't name here, called for that. High expectations for Golding's speech. Why? Because everybody wants to hear how he proposed to finance it. And then even the junior spokesperson on finance, Madam Speaker, came on radio and said that the Leader of the Opposition would outline his funding proposal in the contribution to the budget debate. So again, he has made one of his own lose credibility. But who's going to believe him again? Madam Speaker, that is what happens when you have an opposition that makes a habit of unprincipled positions. The expectations of them will always lead to disappointment. Because, Madam Speaker, when I explained that this move would cost nearly over $45 billion, all you could hear was silence. Mouth zip. Not a peep. The opposition leader spoke for 2 hours and not one word about how he would fund an increase in the income tax threshold that cost over $45 billion. It seems to be the case, Madam Speaker, it seemed to me and to a reasonable person that this was a cynical ploy to get the attention of Jamaicans without any idea about how to sustainably finance it. They did not even know the cost.
And I'll tell you in a minute. I'm sorry, Madam Speaker, the member is trying to mislead the House about the motive of the Leader of Opposition, and he has no such authority.
Minister, it would appear, Minister, it would appear you may continue.
just for the record, Madam Speaker, I said it seems to be the case. Okay? They don't even know the cost. Just winging it. Unprincipled, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, they cannot be trusted, Madam Speaker. Red card. Red card. Madam Speaker, we propose to increase the income tax threshold to $1.7 million from $1.5 million, which will deliver 50,000 more per year to Jamaicans who earn more than 1.5 million. We also introduced for the very first time a reverse income tax credit. Madam Speaker, the ministry paper tabled included that this is designed to increase compliance. Undoubtedly, the government providing a cash give back to registered taxpayers will incentivize greater formalization over the medium term. However, that is not the only aim and certainly not the primary intention of the reverse income tax credit. As such, Madam Speaker, there's nothing in my speech about compliance or about increasing compliance. The words in my speech make it abundantly clear that the intention of the government is that the reverse income tax credit is a fiscal response to prevailing social and economic conditions, particularly for those on the lower end of the income threshold. Madam Speaker, in an income tax system, the taxpayer pays money to the state, and we make such a system progressive by having rates of income tax that increase with income, and by establishing an income tax threshold below which no tax is paid at all. Madam Speaker, negative income tax is even more progressive by reversing the direction in which tax is paid for incomes below a certain level. Earners above that level pay money to the state, while earners below receive money from the state. Now, the reverse income tax credit is not negative income tax, but it is designed in that spirit as a one-off measure. We have set the threshold at $3 million because we wanted persons who are just above the current income tax threshold to also benefit. However, Madam Speaker, so those between 1.5 and 3 million, rather than just getting a 50,000 uplift this year, they'll get the 50,000 plus the 20,000, which is a 70,000 uplift for the year. However, Madam Speaker, the reverse income tax credit is targeted at those within the income bracket for 2023 for whom statutory contributions are deducted or who pay statutory deductions themselves. It is only fair, Madam Speaker, that a benefit such as this goes to those who are contributing to the system from monthly deductions that are made, from monthly deductions or other kinds of deductions, or if they pay it themselves. This is fair because they are at a financial disadvantage as compared to those who are not contributing and take home less than those who are outside the system who are earning similar amounts. Yes, it is true that some people are not formalized due to no fault of their own. Their employers neither deduct nor pay over statutory deductions. Well, those persons have a higher net income than others who perform similar functions from whom deductions are made. That is, for most of these persons, by not having statutory contributions deducted, they're better off by more than the value of the reverse income tax threshold, given the aggregate consolidated percentage represented by statutory deductions. So, Madam Speaker, the primary beneficiaries will be those who earn below the income tax threshold, and in particular, Jamaicans earning close to minimum wage who are contributing to the Jamaican system through statutory deductions from their paycheck. Madam Speaker, there are approximately 570,000 Jamaicans already who earn less than $3 million in 2023 and who contributed to the system through deductions of education tax, NHT, and NIS. These are the persons who will qualify for the reverse income tax credit, and anyone else regularized before the end of the fiscal year. And there are 450,000 approximately persons who earn less than 1.5 million who contribute to the system through a deduction of education tax, NHT, and NIS. Madam Speaker, this includes many security guards, room attendants, factory floor workers, machine operators, cooks, waitresses in restaurants, office attendants, messengers, janitors, drivers, sanitation workers, street cleaners, maintenance staff, who toil every day, who contribute to the Jamaican system through statutory deductions. Madam Speaker, the reverse income tax credit is intended for the mass of working people who make this country work and contribute to the Jamaican system through monthly or regular statutory deductions. We are leveraging economic stability to their benefit. Now, Madam Speaker, I heard opposition leaders cynically suggest that the $11.4 billion that is being used to finance the one-off reverse income tax credit ought to be diverted towards those earning above the income tax threshold, and by so doing, increase the income tax threshold further. Madam Speaker, I was shocked to hear that. I was absolutely shocked to hear that. Madam Speaker, we are directing a benefit of $11.4 billion to persons who earn at the lower end of the income spectrum, including hundreds of thousands of hardworking Jamaicans who earn at minimum wage or just above minimum wage and who contribute to EdTax, NIS, and NHT. Are you suggesting taking away from them and giving to higher income earners? Madam Speaker, when you increase income tax threshold, everyone above the threshold benefits. Those making 10 million, those making 20 million, those making 30 million. So the effect of the opposition leader's suggestion would be to take away the $20,000 reverse income tax credit from the hundreds of thousands of minimum wage earners and those just above, who are among the 570,000, and give it to the 70,000 Jamaicans earning above 3 million. Madam Speaker, that is a red card. That is an approach, Madam Speaker, that we call champagne socialists. And that is what you get, Madam Speaker, from an unprincipled, cynical, flip-flop approach to policymaking. Not only would that suggestion be regressive, the opposite of progressive, it would also be fiscally questionable, given that the source of funding for the one-off reverse income tax credit is non-recurring. Madam Speaker, in 2012, Jamaica was in terrible fiscal shape and needed to raise a lot of revenue. And as I've said, Madam Speaker, the individuals, the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, under tough circumstances, in my view as individuals, did a great job. Okay? Great job as individuals. What I doubt is the institutional capacity for that to be replicated when there are no guardrails, when there is choice. Madam Speaker, the Portia Simpson Miller administration, because we were in, levied a tax package on May 24th, 2012, to be effective June 1st, 2012, which was designed to raise $19 billion for the 2012-13 fiscal year, and which, when annualized on a 12-month basis, was a $23 billion tax package representing 1.8% of GDP at the time. Massive tax package. Included in that tax package was a broadening of the GCT base to include the application of GCT to raw foods, excluding chicken. There was some protest on aspects of the measure. On June 6, 2012, the then government tabled revised revenue measures that, among other changes, amended the application of GCT to raw foods by providing an exemption for domestic raw foods. You understand what happened? So what happened is the government needed to raise revenues in 2012. They came with a tax package, $23 billion annualized, 1.8% of GDP, and included in that tax package was a broadening of the GCT net to include raw foods. There was some protest or representation, and the government in June of that year came back and revised it and took it off of, in other words, left the domestic as it was before. So prior to June of 2012, domestic raw foods and foreign raw foods were equally treated with respect to GCT. Neither category of goods attracted GCT. Now, we got into this position of a lopsided imbalance in the application of GCT on raw foods because of the need for revenue, not protection. Now, Madam Speaker, the imposition of GCT on foreign produced raw foods, but not local produced raw foods, violated binding trade agreements to which Jamaica is a party. It's not a gray area. It is black and white. Madam Speaker, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, is a multilateral, legally binding agreement that regulates trade among more than 153 countries in the world. By now it might be 160, I don't have the exact number. It was entered into 1947, and Jamaica became a contracting party of the GATT on March 9th of 1963. Jamaica's accession to the GATT was part of Jamaica's broader efforts to integrate into the global economy and foster economic development through trade. And the GATT was later replaced in 1995 by the WTO, of which Jamaica is also a member. Now, Madam Speaker, Article 3 of the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade, which anybody can read on the internet. Article 3 of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade addresses national treatment of internal taxation regulation. It is very clear, Madam Speaker, that the agreement, which is binding on Jamaica, forbids the application of GCT on foreign produced goods in a specific category while not also applying GCT to locally produced goods in the same category. Here is an example, here's an excerpt of Article 3, Madam Speaker. And it's in my speech. I won't necessarily read it into the record here, but persons can look at it online. But it basically says the contracting parties recognize that internal taxes and other internal charges, laws, regulations, and requirements affecting the internal sale, offering for sale, purchase, transportation, distribution, or use of products, and internal quantitative regulations, should not be applied to imported domestic products so as to afford protection to domestic production. The products of the territory of any contracting party imported into the territory of any other contracting party shall not be subject directly or indirectly to internal taxes or other internal charges of any kind in excess of those applied directly or indirectly to like domestic products. Moreover, no contracting party shall otherwise apply internal taxes or other internal charges to imported or domestic products in a manner contrary to the principles set forth. Now, Madam Speaker, we didn't sign that agreement. We never wrote that law, but we have an obligation, when it is pointed out to us, to abide by international law. This is not debatable or up for negotiation. It is a crystally clear provision. GCT is an internal tax, and it is against international trade law for it to be applied on foreign produced goods, but not to local goods of the same kind. The other side likes to talk about observing the law and about observing international law. How many times have we heard them talk about that? Huh? Observing international law. But, Madam Speaker, again, these days they operate without principle, flip-flop, changing when the wind suits or when it seems politically expedient, Madam Speaker. This is another example of an unprincipled approach. And, Madam Speaker, the opposition leader asks, whose bidding am I doing? Madam Speaker, he's out of order. I am upholding the rule of law and having Jamaica honor our international, legal, binding obligation. So, Madam Speaker, Jamaica needed the revenue. Jamaica, if you listen, you will learn about this, okay? Madam Speaker, Jamaica needed the revenue in 2012, and so presumably, I'm not saying it is so, I mean, presumably, the decision was made on the basis of, kind of catch me if you can, right? In 2012. Well, Madam Speaker, Jamaica indeed was caught. First by CARICOM. By CARICOM. CARICOM got wind of this breach of international law and wrote to Jamaica demanding that changes be made so that its members were not subject to unfair trade practices. Madam Speaker, Jamaica quickly complied. Quickly complied. No, don't, okay. Trust me on this, okay? Jamaica quickly complied. And the Portia Simpson Miller administration changed the law in 2014 to ensure that foreign raw goods produced in CARICOM member states were exempt from GCT, Madam Speaker. That was in 2014. So they were caught by CARICOM. Fast forward, Madam Speaker, to 2023. Jamaica representatives of the World Trade Organization visited Jamaica in November of 2023 for a customary scheduled review of our trade regime. And Madam Speaker, they saw this breach and brought it to the attention of the current administration. Madam Speaker, in the same way that when CARICOM pointed out the breach in 2014, GCT was promptly removed from imported raw foods originated in CARICOM. It is the same way that the WTO, having pointed it out, Madam Speaker, we're obligated to address it. And there are only two options to address this breach. Either we apply GCT to locally produced raw foods, or we remove it from imported raw foods. And we chose the more palatable option at this time because of removing GCT from raw foods. For good measure, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I have noted the suggestions about negotiations. I've noted the suggestions about negotiations. Madam Speaker, you guys are wrong and strong on this. Strong and wrong. You're strong and wrong. Madam Speaker, this is a black and white issue that violates a founding principle of GATT, Mr. Speaker, signed by 153 countries. It's not a negotiable provision. It's not a negotiable provision. The GCT is not a negotiable provision. I will talk about what is negotiable, but not the GCT. Okay? Now, I use the term blacklisted, Madam Speaker, as a term to mean sanctioned by the international community. There's no literal blacklist for breach of international money laundering or tax obligations. What I meant, Madam Speaker, is that, and as I said, Jamaica would be exposed to trade sanctions from other WTO members. So, Madam Speaker, let's talk about protection. Let's talk about protection and negotiation. Madam Speaker, the differential treatment in the application of GCT on raw foods, hear me out, the differential treatment in the application of GCT on raw foods did not begin in 1991 and did not exist for 21 years after. There's no differential. They were treated on the same grounds, right? It's only in the past 12 years where, due to the need for revenues from a deep fiscal crisis, that Jamaica ended up flouting international law with respect to the non-uniform application of GCT. Now, Madam Speaker, member states of the WTO have the opportunity to apply, like Jamaica, to apply duties and additional stamp duties, provided that the maximum duties that could be applicable are published in the WTO schedule. Okay, so how the WTO works, Madam Speaker, every country, Mr. Speaker, every country has to submit the maximum duties that it can charge. And that was done for Jamaica some time ago. And the process of changing those maximum duties, Mr. Speaker, is a negotiation that's very, very, very expensive and can take a very long time. Currently, Jamaica applies import duties and additional stamp duties on imported raw foods. For example, for tomatoes, for cabbage, and for carrots, raw foods that we produce in Jamaica, import duty is 100%. And additional stamp duty is 80%. And these are compounded. And that results in an effective total duty rate of 260% for tomatoes, for cabbage, and for carrots. Now, Madam Speaker, as part of Jamaica's WTO agreements, Jamaica has committed to maximum levels of duties of 100% and maximum levels of duties of other duties, i.e. additional stamp duty of 80% to be charged on selected imports. And that is a public schedule that all the countries of the world have. Okay? All the countries have what we have put down as our maximum. We never put it down, not this administration. It was agreed on our collective behalf in the past. Now, Madam Speaker, unlike internal taxes such as GCT, as I mentioned, these maximum inbound rates are negotiable. But we must bear in mind, and I will circulate for full public consumption and understanding, the process of renegotiation. And you'll see the flow chart. And I'll share with you documentation that you see how complicated a process it is and how long it takes. And in addition, Article 23 of GATT, there's an article that speaks about how you modify the schedule. Okay? And what we aim to do is to increase public understanding. Right? There's Article 23 of the GATT schedule. And it reminds us, and I'm going to, in quotes from Article 3, it says, in such negotiations and agreement, meaning negotiations, which may include provisions for compensatory adjustments with respect to other products, the contracting parties concerned shall endeavor to maintain a general level of reciprocal and mutually advantageous concessions not less favorable to trade than provided for in this agreement prior to such negotiations. And what that means, Madam Speaker, is that any favorable adjustment in maximum rates in one area would need to be traded with compensating adjustments elsewhere. So, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, the government, Madam Speaker, has the option of additional stamp duties and other duties, because we are not at the maximum level for all of the products. And the government of Jamaica is committed to quickly reviewing the additional stamp duty regime, including for raw foods, with a view of making the necessary adjustments in consultation with stakeholders. We are putting together a working group in this regard. The amendment for the GCT has not been passed yet. Okay? We are putting together, Madam Speaker, a working group in this regard, which includes the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce, and the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, inclusive of the Jamaica Customs Agency. Each of the parties to the working group will engage stakeholders in their sector. For the Ministry of Agriculture, this will include the Jamaica Agricultural Society, I believe, Minister Green. It will also include maybe even RADA and other stakeholders in the agriculture sector. The third schedule to the GCT schedule, I must remind everyone, Madam Speaker, shows all the items exempted. This is a very important point, because there are some that will take advantage of the public not understanding what is happening. There's a view that when we say raw food stuff, we mean everything conceivable that constitutes raw food. That's not the case. Okay, the third schedule of the GCT Act shows all the items, hear me out first, shows all the items, Madam Speaker, that have been exempted from GCT from the very beginning, meaning even when the net was broadened, these items were not included. As a result, these items did not attract GCT on imports and did not attract GCT locally. So these items, Madam Speaker, the measure announced today does not affect in any way items on this schedule, which include fresh fruit and vegetables, excluding imported apples, pears, apricots, cherries, peaches, nectarines, plums, berries, grapes, and kiwis, ground provisions, legumes, onions and garlic, meat, chicken, fish, crustacean or mollusk, corn, Madam Speaker. So just let me be very clear that since these items were exempted from GCT, there was and is no differential in the regime. And so it follows, Madam Speaker, that for these, sorry, I said it out the wrong way around. It follows, Madam Speaker, that for these, GCT will continue to apply. So let me say it again. When the net was broadened, Madam Speaker, and GCT was then taken off of some, this third schedule, Madam Speaker, represents the items that were exempted from that treatment. So the amendment to be passed at some point in 24-25, Madam Speaker, will not have an effect on these items. The way they are treated will not change. So, Madam Speaker, with respect to the other items that are not on this list, Madam Speaker, with respect to for these items, Madam Speaker, they are being treated, the GCT treatment for these items is the same on local and foreign. And that is why, Madam Speaker, and they were exempt, because they were exempt from the beginning. Okay? No, you are totally confused, member, with the greatest of respect. Totally confused. No, you are totally confused. Madam Speaker, as I mentioned, we have announced the intention to uphold international law, Madam Speaker, but we, at some point in this fiscal year, will bring an amendment. But we can choose the time that amendment is brought. And as I mentioned, Madam Speaker, we will have a committee, a multi-stakeholder committee, Madam Speaker, to look at the additional stamp duty regime, Madam Speaker, to make the best decisions going forward, taking into account multiple points of view. Madam Speaker, just some inaccurate claims that the opposition spokesperson on finance made the comment, PATH funds have not kept up with inflation. That's not correct, Madam Speaker. It's not correct. Allocations to PATH in the upcoming fiscal year have increased by almost 30%, or $2 billion, which is 4 times the rate of inflation over the past 12 months. Since 2016, the average real rate of increase in PATH allocations adjusted for inflation is approximately 15%. Madam Speaker, so PATH, no. I'm saying PATH allocations, Madam Speaker, PATH allocations have increased by 30% in the last 12 months, and since 2016 have increased at a rate, Madam Speaker, way above the rate of inflation. And I believe the number is 15% above the rate of inflation. Madam Speaker, the opposition leader, Mr. Speaker, the opposition leader also erroneously claimed, and I read in quotes, there has been upward movement in poverty, both poverty and inequality under the JLP government. The prevalence of poverty increased from 16.7% to 11% in 2019. Madam Speaker, it is inaccurate. And it is beneath the leader of the opposition to mislead in this way. He knows that the rate of 16.7% is for 2021, 3 years ago, yet he speaks of it as if it is a current figure. He doesn't even put the date for it. He puts a date for the 11%, but you notice the date for the 16.7 is not there. Madam Speaker, he knows that the Jamaica Labour Party administration began in February 2016. And he knows that in 2015, under the PNP, the incidence of poverty was 21.2%. Madam Speaker, the incidence of poverty in Jamaica, even in the midst of the devastating COVID-19 pandemic.
You know, I've listened to the torrent of what he's had to say. But on this particular point, I was quoting from the most recent Jamaica survey of living conditions. I was quoting from that, which is a government publication. So, red card, red card.
He may be quoting from a survey of living conditions, but he knows that the rate is for 2021. It's in the public domain. So, Madam Speaker, and more than that, he knows that the rate of poverty for 2015 under their government was 21.2%. Now, if you start at 21.2%, and even after COVID, you're at 16.7%, how can you stand and tell the people of Jamaica that poverty has increased? Madam Speaker, red card, red card. Misleading the House. Misleading the House. Misleading the House. Madam Speaker, for the record, poverty in Jamaica has fallen under the Jamaica Labour Party administration to 2021. That is just a basic fact, Madam Speaker. It was 21.2, and in 2021, it was 16.7%. And, Madam Speaker, in its quarterly report for August 2023, for those who are paying attention, the PIOJ reported that they are projecting a fall even from 16.7%. Madam Speaker, and furthermore, in October 2023, the World Bank released their estimate of poverty for 2022. I don't know if they'll be correct or not, but it's way lower than 16.7. So don't go around, there's enough to talk about. You don't have to make things up. Right? Of 16 talking about poverty has increased under this administration. It is just not true. And for misleading the Jamaican people, Madam Speaker, deserve a red card. A red card. Red card. We cannot tolerate this coming from an opposition leader, Madam Speaker. It is not right. It is not right, Madam Speaker. It is not right. And I wish I never had to stand here and point it out.
You have no use. You're an husband.
You need. I hope it's not intentional. Madam Speaker, there's another kind of false claim. Here's what was claimed in the opposition leader's presentation. The government has been boasting of low unemployment when most of those jobs are below the International Labour Organization standard of decent work. Madam Speaker, he's just taking anecdotes and just stating them as fact, not looking at any documentation whatsoever to substantiate the views. There is actually a Caribbean Policy Research 2023 report, and it's called Growthless Jobs. That's the name of it. Yeah? It's not a favorable title, right? But that's what it's called. And in that report, produced by scholars who are doing research and studying, here's what it says, and permit me to read what it says. It says, employment data from the labor force surveys between 2015 and 2022 shows that most of the newly created jobs have been full-time jobs. in Jamaica, and we know that, you know, the BPO alone has expanded massively. Tourism has expanded massively. Those are full-time jobs. In Jamaica, and I'm continuing to quote, my intervention there is not a part of the text. Let me start again. Employment data from the labor force surveys between 2015 and 2022 shows that most of the newly created jobs have been full-time jobs. In Jamaica, the number of employees working more than 35 hours has risen substantially alongside a simultaneous but less dramatic fall in those working fewer than 35 hours, indicating a shift towards full-time jobs. The rise of formal work is displayed by the occupation composition of employment growth. Two of the strongest occupational growth categories were clerks, accounting for 24% of the new jobs, and professionals, senior officials, and technicians, which added 21%. Combined growth in these two categories represents half of the growth across occupations, and 84% of those were formal workers. The rise in formal employment has been fueled by increased employment of educated workers. Just 23% of unskilled workers in Jamaica work in the formal economy, compared to 69% of semi-skilled and 91% of skilled workers. And it goes on. And I have the rest of it in my speech. So, but the essence of it, Madam Speaker, just contradicts the claim that he's making, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I just want to make one other.
Stop talking, the false to drop out. Hold the false to them out. Don't make Julia look them out again. Oh. Julia. Otherwise you can't come back. Oh, shut your mouth. You're not been. Your days are over. Your days are over. Shut your mouth across here. You don't work the at all. You are useless. You are useless, Eustace.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, jeez and peace. Mr. Speaker, the opposition, and you know, this is not a major point, but it's one that I has to point out, Madam Speaker, because this creep. The opposition spokesman on finance stated that, furthermore, we initiated reforms to grant the Bank of Jamaica operational independence in setting monetary policy, primarily focused on inflation targeting to ensure price stability. Madam Speaker, in this country, we like to grab ideas and think we can own them. And ideas are a dime a dozen, and in the context of countries and policies I mentioned earlier. And therefore, there's sometimes certainly a confusion coming from opposition sides between ideas and talk and action, on the other hand, achievement and results. I know by experience that the idea of operational independence of the central bank predates even the Simpson-Miller administration and dates back to the 2010 IMF program. I know that because I was on the BOJ board in 2009 and 2010. It is an idea I found very attractive at the time. And I must tell you, it is one of the ideas, and I was inspired by the discussion that ensued. However, Madam Speaker, Jamaica was grappling with suffocating fiscal dominance and unsustainable fiscal arrangements. And though it was an idea and there's work done on it and stuff brought to the board, that I was a part of, there's no way it could be done at that time. But as tangible evidence, Madam Speaker, in 2009, former Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Don Webby, proposed that the BOJ set up a monetary policy committee to determine interest rates. Yeah, you see that article there? That's 2009. Don Webby, restructure BOJ. Webby proposes new central bank model, proposes committee, right? And he wouldn't have been the first. So these ideas existed from then and indeed were being pursued, but in reality they could not be achieved. Now, Madam Speaker, anyone can review the extended fund facility agreements and all 10 reviews under the 2012 to 2015 administration. None of the many structural benchmarks in those documents addressed monetary policy operations of the central bank, nor modernization of the central bank. None of them. During this period, the government's economic policy framework was set out in those documents, and particularly in the structural and quantitative targets. Madam Speaker, in my capacity as Ambassador of Economic Affairs, with the support of the Prime Minister, I negotiated the precautionary standby arrangement with the IMF in 2016 and the structural benchmarks under the precautionary standby arrangement. And those benchmarks represent the first time that, that monetary policy operations or modernization of the central bank is listed as an agreed policy objective. And the sixth structural benchmark reads, to enhance the BOJ, and you can read it for yourself. No. There is no structural benchmark on the monetary policy operations. Trust me on it, opposition leader. Okay? Trust me on it. Madam Speaker, to get there required technical assistance. A technical assistance mission from the IMF consisted of monetary policy experts who visited Jamaica, met with officials, and delivered their report in 2017, and that formed the basis of more than one cabinet submission. And even in advance of the law coming into effect, Jamaica began its transition to full-fledged inflation targeting. Inflation targeting, Madam Speaker, is not a secret. I'm not saying it's not a secret. And so when you say began the transition, inflation target is not a secret. It's a very public thing, because if it's not public, it cannot be achieved. It's a public structure. It requires publicly setting inflation targets and updating the public about progress towards deviation from those targets. It requires, as a prerequisite, and here is the part, a transparent competitive mechanism for the central bank to engage with the foreign exchange market in purchases and sales of foreign exchange. You can't have inflation targeting without a transparent competitive mechanism. And this prerequisite for inflation targeting, Madam Speaker, and that prerequisite, Mr. Speaker, was only achieved in 2017 with the launch of the Bank of Jamaica's Foreign Exchange Intervention Trading Tool, BFIXIT, which is a rules-based, competitive, multiple-price FX tool that improved the bank's interaction with authorized dealers and cambios for the buying and selling of foreign exchange. With BFIXIT in place, the Bank of Jamaica officially began its transition to full-fledged inflation targeting in 2017, and that was a public thing. The central bank governor gave a speech at a quarterly press briefing entitled Modernizing Jamaica's Foreign Exchange Market, the Pivot to Inflation Targeting. The Pivot to Inflation Targeting in November of 2017. And he, in that speech, Madam Speaker, he noted the milestone of the first time that a Minister of Finance and Public Service set in a medium-term target of 4 to 6%. That is when inflation targeting was done in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, there were things done between 2012 and 2016. What I'm saying is the statement, Madam Speaker, made, as it is made, the words used are inaccurate, Madam Speaker. The words used. We need... you know your speech. No. Read what you said. Read what you said. So, Madam Speaker, and nothing to do with monetary policy operations. Okay? So you can talk about that. Talk about what you passed. But you didn't do anything with monetary policy operations. That's a fact. Now, Madam Speaker, in last year's budget presentation, Mr. Speaker, I'm not looking at him when I'm speaking. It's in my speech. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. I apologize.
You're confused the people, so you're confused.
Madam Speaker, in last year's budget presentation, I spent a considerable amount of time speaking about the need to transition from contract employment to permanent employment. Madam Speaker, this is a problem that has been around for 20 years or longer, maybe 30 years, where people are employed temporarily, have no security of tenure, can't get a mortgage, and can't live normal lives, don't have pension on their retirement. This has been the reality in Jamaica long before this administration for at least at least 20 years before this administration, if not more. And the policy position of this government is that we are determined over a period of time, and last year I gave 3 years, right, over a 3-year period to address this problem. Madam Speaker, the process, though, of addressing the problem is challenging and long. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be done, which I won't get into. But I am pleased, Madam Speaker, to update this House that with respect to the National Solid Waste Management Authority and its 4 regional companies, the Cabinet has given the approval for 3,813 new posts to be created. And that is across the National Solid Waste Management Authority, MPM Waste Management Authority, NEMPM Waste Management, SPM Waste Management, and WPM Waste Management Authority. Madam Speaker, at the moment, there are only 269 posts. Everybody else is on contract. Sanitation workers, truck drivers, route supervisors, enforcement officers, mechanics. Madam Speaker, all of the working people in NSWMA and its subsidiaries for the past 30 years approximately, Madam Speaker, we're actors, as the Minister is saying, on contract. But under this government, Madam Speaker, the permanent post has been created. And in the upcoming fiscal year, we will make workers in the NSWMA and their subsidiaries permanent. Time come for permanent employment, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, we have, Mr. Speaker, there is just a slight change to the provision on importation of armored cars for the security industry. Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, in a where Mr. Speaker, which we are tabling here today. I don't have it on me. But Mr. Speaker, this is a significant budget. This is the 9th budget of this administration, Mr. Speaker. And this is the 7th consecutive year of absolutely no new taxes. And Mr. Speaker, we have demonstrated that we are a government that believes in economic freedom, and we are also a government that believes in social justice. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister announced a groundbreaking measure that will have a tremendous impact on inequality in Jamaica with the creation of the Jamaica 60 trust funds that he announced, Mr. Speaker. And he'll have more to say about that in time. He raised the minimum wage from 13,000 to 15,000, Mr. Speaker. And provided a raft of benefits for persons in seeking housing. Importantly, which has not been carried sufficiently in the media, he announced that the work will begin this year for regularization of a number of informal communities across the country with a $15 billion program that will begin on the capital side of the budget next year. Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, we are implementing for the first time a reverse income tax credit, which will apply $20,000 to all Jamaicans earning below $3 million who contribute to the Jamaican system. We will be increasing the pension exemption and the age exemption such that pensioners who are over the age of 65 and who earn more than the current income tax threshold of $1.5 million will have the opportunity for $135,000 more on their pension. Mr. Speaker, we're increasing the income tax threshold from $1.5 million to $1.7 million at a cost of $9 billion. We are removing, finally, Mr. Speaker, the need for a student loan in accessing tertiary financing from the Student Loan Bureau. A regressive measure that has been in place for 30 years, abolished, Mr. Speaker, by this government. We are increasing the de minimis threshold on importation, doubling it from $50 US to $100 US. We're doubling the passenger duty threshold, Mr. Speaker, from $500 US to $1,000 US. We are constructing at the same time 4 hospitals across Jamaica. We have $20 billion allocated to roads, building highways, procuring 100 new buses and 50 garbage trucks, all at the same time. Mr. Speaker, this is a government, unlike others from the other side that we've had before, that pursues economic stability and then turns around and leverages that economic stability in the interest of the Jamaican people. And we're predisposed to an environment that is predictable and not one that is chaka-chaka with taxes every year. And most importantly, Madam Speaker, we don't have to rely on tactics that earn red cards with producing charts that don't include relevant years, don't include the fact that there's a COVID crisis, don't include the revenue, Mr. Speaker. We don't produce that. Red card for them, Mr. Speaker. Red card. So, Mr. Speaker, it is with that, Mr. Speaker, of presenting a budget that pushes them into the corner and forces them to make those kind of flip-flop, unprincipled mistakes, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this is a government that in the pursuit of economic freedom and social justice improves the standard of living of the Jamaican people with per capita income rising even as we strengthen the social safety net. We introduced the social pension, Mr. Speaker. We introduced the tourism workers pension scheme, and we will introduce the unemployment insurance. And Mr. Speaker, with that, Mr. Speaker, I conclude the closing presentation to the budget debate for 2024-25. Mr. Speaker, I ask that the bill be read a second time.
The question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Clarke.
A bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2025 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament. Read a second time.
Thanks. Minister? Minister? The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill, clause by clause. Minister, how would you like to proceed?
Madam Speaker, if there are no objections, Madam Speaker. No, I ask for the whole bill to put. Chairman of the committee, I ask that the whole bill be put to the House, Madam Speaker.
Members, I put clauses 1 through to clause 3. Those in favor? Aye. I put schedules 2 and 3. Those in favor?
Aye.
I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor?
Aye.
The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam.
No, not as yet, Minister. 1 minute. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Minister?
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the bill be read a third time.
Madam Clarke? Members, the question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Apply a Sum out of the Consolidated Fund to the service of the year ending on the 31st day of March 2025 and to appropriate the sums granted in this session of Parliament, read a third time and passed.
House Leader?
Yes. Madam Speaker, I beg to move for the recommittal of 2 items. Items announcements and item notices of motions given orally in order for the amendment to the Ministry Paper number 11 and 12 to be tabled, and also for me to take a motion with regards to an amendment to the membership of the Economic and Production Commission. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Members, the question is that we recommit announcements and notices of motions given orally. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Announcements?
Also laid on the table of the House today are copies of the amendment to the Ministry Paper number 11 of 2024 entitled Revenue Measures for the Financial Year 2024-2025.
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, I will move, be it resolved, with reference to the resolution approved by this Honourable House on the 29th day of September 2020, appointing an Economic and Production Committee, that the name Mr. Hugh Graham be deleted and the name Mr. Fitz Jackson be substituted thereto. And, Madam Speaker, I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take this motion.
Public business, House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take the motion, notice of which I gave earlier.
Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the motion be approved.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, it is not intended to do any further business today. But on the motion of adjournment, Madam Speaker, I'd like to just indicate to members that we are at the verge of the observation of perhaps the most holy period in Christendom. And for those of us in Jamaica who have subscribed to the Christian faith, this is a particularly holy period. And as this Honorable House breaks its session in conclusion of the financial debate, we just want to use the opportunity to wish members a very peaceful and holy Easter, and that indeed they will be rested and refreshed and do the wonderful family things that make for the strength of this society over the years. Madam Speaker, we will be taking a short break, as is customary, the Easter break, and we'll come back to this Honorable House later to recommence the sittings of the House, at which time we will begin the sectoral debates. And we're hoping to have a vigorous debating session as per usual, as the ministers will outline the plans and programs in terms of the appropriations budget, which we have just passed in this Honorable House. Madam Speaker, I therefore beg to move that this Honorable House be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
The question is that the House do now adjourn for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This Honorable House now stands adjourned.
Today, we are read from Luke 23, 32 to 43. Then carry two criminals fi go kill them same time